Good evening, everybody. We're just going to allow a few more minutes to see if we've got 2 or 3 more participants that are waiting to join us. Thank you so much for joining.
At Antronix Diagnostics, we celebrate sound. We exist in partnership with hearing healthcare professionals to create a world where everybody, young and old, has access to local, reliable, inclusive, and sustainable hearing and balance healthcare. We are dedicated to your success. We believe in the future of audiology and our obligation to the profession by unlocking opportunities through the provision of world-class products, personal services, expert training and support, as well as outstanding business value tailored to meet your unique business needs. We can support you with equipment as well as training in line with best practice guidelines. We also consult to offer additional services to your clients. Our technical team is ready to support you with any queries, calibrations and/or repair requests. Visit our website to view our range of pioneering equipment and CPD accredited material. Partner with us and enjoy the freedom to focus on what matters most to you, serving your clients.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you tonight. I am absolutely delighted to attend the launch of our long-awaited private practice school and mentorship program. Hanneke, we're extremely grateful that you agreed to partner with Sashla and for really making this possible and offering our members access to your wealth of knowledge. To our industry partners, Antronix and WSA Audiology, and specifically Rixton tonight, thank you so much for always offering your support to the association. Your support in this case allows our members to attend this course at a discounted rate. And so we are really very appreciative. Hanneke has got years and years of experience. We know that she's been involved in private practice management training and coaching as a member of the InStop team for the past 9 years. She has presented seminars on coding and ethics for the private practice community. And from her experience and her own experience in her mental health occupational therapy private practice, she developed a private practice school and mentorship program. And she's been in private practice, a private practice owner for the past 19 years in the West Rand in Johannesburg. And Hanneke, although I am no longer in private practice, I'm definitely going to keep my ear to the ground tonight. You never know when I've got to start again. And to all of our SASHLA members, to the two representatives, Magda Meyer from Amtronics and Rikus Grobler from Rixton, welcome. And I'm going to hand you over to Hanneke. Thank you, Hanneke.
Thanks, Anneline. Welcome, everybody. I've got a frog in my throat this evening, so if I start coughing, I'll mute myself and drink some water. But I hope you enjoy the session. I'm going to share my screen. And then we can get going. There you go. Just also want to close this for me. I'm also going to switch my video off, so that nothing covers the screen as we progress. So just quickly on the private practice school and mentorship program, it's important that we know everything about private practice, whether you start now or whether you've been in practice for a while. It's just good to cover the basics. We don't dive deep into everything. I think that is important for me to say that. But it gives enough information for you to be able to go and research and figure out what will work for you. I also am happy to share resources, etc., to assist you further. And so without further ado, I'm going to start. I just quickly want to make sure that I stop my video. There you go. So tonight we're going to discuss business models, getting started with your practice, and looking at what is needed for rooms. So structuring of a private practice, often we have questions about that. What do I do? When do I move to a bigger practice? And when do I need to register a different entity? So first and foremost, we have the solus practice, where it's usually only you in the practice. You can employ people as a solus practitioner. Also, you can move into a partnership where partners of the same profession gets together and have a contract with one another. And then you have an association. Now, in an association, there are costs, etc., that people pay and share, but it can be members of different professions. Then also you can have an incorporated company with members of the same profession. More information on what is acceptable, you'll find in the HPCSA policy document on business practices. And just notably, what is not accepted is a Pty Limited and a trust. And the reason for that is the personal accountability that is required as a healthcare practitioner. And so you can have, as a business person, you can have a Pty Limited. If you want to consider a Pty Limited, it makes sense that you form an administrative company or a manufacturing company if you manufacture goods, or a training company if you provide training that serves your practice, that renders services to the practice. So you'll see that typically people that have Pty Limiteds are not practicing under that Pty Limited. If you are practicing and you send accounts to your clients, it would need to be from a practice number, which is usually a solus practice, partnership, association, or incorporated company. So let's look at the benefits and drawbacks of the various business entities. For a solus practice, it's fairly cheap and easy to set up. You as the business owner also have 100% control and ownership of the business, and therefore you are entitled to all of the profits, and there are no restrictions on how much capital or money you want to put back into the business. The downsides of it is that there's unlimited liability for you as a practice owner, as you are personally liable and you assume all risk. Another downside is that you are the only owner And when you want to include a different owner or another owner, you would have to dissolve the sole proprietorship and form a new business entity. Should you have a solus practice and you pass away, there's a lack of continuity, because what happens to your practice as a solus practitioner if you're not available anymore to render services? And it's also difficult to declare what is owned by you and what is owned by the practice when you want to change the business structure. In other words, you want to bring in more people to co-own the business. It might also be difficult to raise funds, as you are the only person that can be looked at for funding, or when funding is considered. Then partnership. A partnership agreement usually states all the responsibilities of the people in the partnership. What is great is that the more people there are, the more knowledge and expertise you bring to the practice. Also, you have more capital and cash flow. The financial burden is shared, and expenses as well. And potentially you would have a better work-life balance, because there's more than one person that does the work, and there's no formal auditing of your finances required. And you can then convert to an incorporated company fairly easy. The downsides of it is that each of the partners are personally liable for the debt of the practice. And there's also shared control of the practice. So you can't now decide what you want to do and run with it. You need to include your partner in the discussion. Each partner will pay their own tax, and there will always be a possible conflict with partners or other people within your practice. So just to bear that in mind. It can be difficult if you want to sell the practice, but your partner or partners don't want to sell. If a partner leaves or passes away, the partnership will cease to exist, and you would need to figure out what next. Do you want to form a new partnership, or are you doing an association or an incorporated company? When we consider an association, the HPCSA defines association as a form of business where two or more practitioners practice for their own account, but they share communal assets or facilities. So you can practice as a specific business entity under the umbrella association, where you share expenses and resources according to an agreement or a memorandum of understanding or a formal contract. An incorporated company, a personal liability company it's also called, at least one director is required. A memorandum of incorporation sets out the rules governing the conduct of the company, as you as the owners then specify. But if you are the only owner or the only director, you then, or the only shareholder, you decide what the MOI looks like. It is treated as a separate legal entity, and it's separate from its owners, which is a positive. When there's liability, we need to consider that the shareholders' liability is limited, and they can't be held accountable for the debt or actions of the incorporated company. But personal liability is imposed on directors if they knowingly participate in business in a reckless manner or a fraudulent manner. What is positive, when the practice is sold, the ownership can be transferred to a new owner, so the shares are being transferred, and personal liability companies last indefinitely, which provides security to the owners of the company. So it does not cease to exist just because the founding directors and shareholders have left the company. Owners are free to decide how they want to distribute the profits to the members of the company, and the incorporated company is compelled to prepare annual financial statements, but it's not required to be audited. Shares are not offered to the public, and the transferability of its shares is restricted as per the memorandum of incorporation. So if you think about us as healthcare practitioners, we can't be in a partnership or in a relationship with non-health professionals when we render services. So that's where the shares cannot just be offered to anybody, and it's restricted as per the memorandum of incorporation. There are some legal requirements and regulations which create certainty for the shareholders of the company. It is, however, more costly to establish, and it's more regulated than a sole proprietorship or a partnership. In an incorporated company, there's double taxation, so on the taxable income of the company and also with regards to declared dividends. The number of shareholders involved can frustrate decision making, and just logically, if you have to ask 20 people before you can buy a table, it can be quite frustrating. There's more red tape if you have many shareholders. So how do I choose what business entity will work the best for me? There are a number of considerations to consider. And the first thing is, what do you want to achieve and why do you want to achieve it? So it's your vision and your mission, and consider the resources that you need to achieve your vision and your mission. Also, from a financial perspective, what do you have available? How much do you need? How much do you expect to come in? If you start small, it makes sense that you start as a sole proprietor and you proceed eventually to one of the other entities as your needs change. If you have a lot of money available, then you might want to start an incorporated company already. And potentially you then employ or you get more shareholders in to make sure that the business is big and it stays big. Risks. Think of now and the future. What are the risks now and in the future to your practice? What do you know about the foreseeable future? I'm thinking about NHI. I'm thinking about a new hospital that you are the healthcare practitioner at, or is it an established hospital? Just consider what potentially can be the risks. Then consider the legal requirements, legislation, your scope of practice, ethics, and also tax. Each business entity has its own tax benefits and drawbacks. So considering what is the best fit for you at this stage. And then also consider your business continuity. What if you pass on, or you become incapacitated or insolvent, or you want to immigrate? So it makes sense that you set up the business in a way that will mitigate these eventualities. My advice is get help from professionals that do this every day. If you are not sure about the finances, then go and see an accountant. Legal, go and see a legal practitioner, or you can maybe have a business coach even that can help you to decide on your business structure. But ultimately, you need to know why you want your own practice. Why is it that you don't want to continue working for someone else? Or why is it that you want to move outside of government? Or maybe you have to ask yourself, why are you still in private practice? What are the benefits for you in your mind? So I've written a few benefits of having my own practice that has been beneficial. Consider these. Think of the ones that apply specifically to you, or think of the ones that I haven't mentioned that is specifically a benefit to you. The first thing is you are in control. You can control your time, the number of patients you see, or flexibility, for example, to be around for your family, and every other aspect of how your practice operates. The second thing is less drama. They are limited in internal office politics. If you think about it, in larger hospitals and practices, you often get those. The benefit is that you get to build your own team of staff. You choose who you want as part of your team. Also, from a relationship perspective, you get to develop long-term relationships with your patients or clients and the people that refer to you. Financially, you have better control of the patient experience, including the billing and the patient journey. You decide where you put your money. as well within the practice. Also, it's a better investment compared to working in someone else's practice and helping to build their business. And then also you get to choose what you treat. You can be picky in terms of the conditions that you treat, specifically if you are interested in a speciality or you work in a specific geographic location. So remember that within that context, you get to grow and mature over time because you are more specific. Then it brings me to the boring stuff, but it's important that we know what the requirements are and also what our needs are in the process. And the annual fee is payable by the end of March each year. It is important that we know that we can't practice legally if we are not registered with the HPCSA. You can also conveniently make your payments via the practitioner portal, and there is the link for that. From there, you can register at the BHF to get your practice number. These days, you can go online, download the documents, complete them, and email them back, which is great because we used to have to either hand deliver it or deliver it by courier. So once you've received your practice number, you can now start to operate your practice. You can start seeing patients, and then it comes to how do we get paid? Now, if you have a cash practice, that's not an issue. But if you are reliant on medical schemes to pay you, it would be wise to register with each scheme. Now, usually when we register with the BHF, the medical schemes do get our information because it's connected to our practice number, but often they don't pay us because they say they don't have our bank details. So all of that often need to be FICA'd and verified. They want to make sure that you are you and it's not a fraudulent person that want to claim from the medical scheme. So it is wise to contact each scheme. You register as a healthcare professional with them. You provide your proof of identity and your business bank account. And you can then also register on medical schemes websites to track payments and download remittance advices. Then you can register with the CIPC if you are a sole proprietor or a sole practitioner, but you don't have to. However, if as a private company you want to operate as a incorporated company, you would need to have a memorandum of incorporation and register at the CIPC. They have a self-service terminal, which is great, and you can then step by step go through this process. The memorandum of incorporation, they have a standard one that you can use. Banks often support you. You can go through an accountant or an attorney to make this registration happen. So if you don't want to do it yourself, you can pay someone else to go through all the steps. Then medical indemnity. Ultimately, as independent practitioners, we need to have medical professional indemnity cover so that if there's a claim against us for malpractice or harm that we have caused, that there's money available to pay out to the claimant if they are successful. If you don't have medical professional indemnity cover, you can be subjected to an inquiry by the HPCSA. And there's a document specifically that speaks to that I will be sending to all of you. So for you to help you in your practice, there are 3 advisors that you need. And the first one is an accountant, the second one a legal advisor, and it is helpful to have a mentor or mentors. Specifically for your field of practice, it can be a business mentor, or it can just be a supervisor that assists you in debriefing difficult cases. So it's really helpful to have these advisors, because we are trying to be therapists. We are trying to be healthcare professionals. We are not trying to do business unless you've done some extra training. But in reality, it can be quite tough. It can also be fairly lonely and very scary. So having these 3 advisors can be really helpful. Then the HPCSA asks us to follow certain requirements with regards to our stationery. The first thing is we need to be clear what is the name of the practice, profession and speciality or subspeciality needs to be named, registered qualifications or any other academic qualifications that are relevant in abbreviated form, registration number with the HPCSA, as well as your practice number, details, your physical addresses, email address, contact numbers, and practice or consultation hours. You can have a logo or a designed letterhead. Many years ago, we were not allowed to have that, but now we can have that. So feel free to get someone that creates a professional logo and designed letterhead. And from there, you can develop templates like letters, reports, and feedback, etc. And this is all in the HPCSA booklet too, if you want to go and read up. Then qualifications and CPD. Your basic qualification needs to be compliant with the HPCSA training requirements. If you are not compliant, you wouldn't be able to register with the HPCSA. If you consider to do a postgraduate degree or an additional diploma, but ask yourself if it will make you more proficient in your practice and will it increase income in your practice. And honestly, it doesn't always. So even if you do spend the money to do a master's degree or a postgraduate degree, it might not translate to better income. And the reason is just that the medical schemes pay what they pay. We can't increase our rate. However, if you ask private rates, that will be different. For the HPCSA, CPD activities are a statutory and an ethical obligation. And there are possible actions if we are non-compliant. For example, they can change the category of registration to supervised practice, or they will ask you to pass a board examination. They might suspend you until you are CPD compliant, or they might choose another resolution that they think would be appropriate. But ultimately, it's important that we do further training and CPD that is relevant to how we see ourselves in the next 5 years. So it needs to connect with your vision and your mission. It will definitely make you more effective as a practitioner. So really don't choose CPD activities just because you get the CPD points or the CEUs. My recommendation would be do something that you love, and you then get CEUs for that. So invest in yourself. Then if we then go over to tax, there are legal requirements and tax structures applicable to us as healthcare practitioners, but ultimately it's wise to seek the advice of a business lawyer and an accountant with medical practice experience who understands what is required of us as healthcare practitioners. It can be quite complex. And so you will get a video of someone that is individual. You earn over a specific amount per tax year, you will be taxed on a sliding scale. So the rate of tax you pay increases as your earnings increase. As an individual, you benefit from a general tax rebate, which brings down the amount of tax you owe by a flat amount, depending on your age. And in a company, profits are taxed and dividend tax is levied. So importantly, there are numerous deductions and allowances that can be considered for an individual and a company, and there are detailed calculations that come with that to make sure that you are tax efficient. What is evident though is that you earn more and move into the highest tax bracket, the difference in tax between a company and a sole proprietor decreases. So then one thing to consider is lower levels of taxable income. It will make sense that you operate as a sole proprietor, but in the higher income brackets, it's more likely that a company registration will be more beneficial. And this is why we need accountants to assist us to make the best possible decision for ourselves. You can go and get more information on taxstim.com. They really have good information. And I know FNB have a tax team benefit through some of the benefits that you can access as a business owner. Then consider practice management software. I don't know if people that still manually send in their claims to the medical scheme. So most of us use switching companies, and it really simplifies the financial activities for your practice, including revenue cycle management, also error reduction. It maximizes the reimbursement and improves efficiency throughout the practice. These days, all of us can either go into an app or the internet. We go and we do the billing quickly while the patient is walking out of the practice. And I know then that the billing is done and the patient medical scheme gets charged for the services that you've rendered. So really think about practice management software that makes it easy, accessible. And many of them now include scheduling and note-keeping and reporting. Ultimately, you can also outsource your billing to a third party. They will charge fixed costs and or a percentage of your practice's collection. So the best is to pick a system that works the best for you. You can do your own billing or you can outsource it. And by saying that you can do your own billing, you can employ someone that does the billing for you with your own practice management software. So then we move over to technology. It's important that you consider the essentials that you'll need in order to get up and running. And that would be hardware and software. Hardware typically are the equipment and the things that we have to access that technology, like laptops and computers and tablets. Consider a server if you're not using the cloud. We all need a printer and scanner and things like that. Backup power source these days, microphone and webcam if you do online consults, the internet, and obviously a point of sale unit. Then also software, and that's our typical Microsoft Windows or Apple or cloud-based storage, etc. What is really helpful is if you have ICD-10 lookup, online note-keeping, etc. So really thinking of the software that will serve you. It is helpful to get IT support, that if you get stuck or you're not sure about something, you just phone your IT guy and he can advise you. It's important that you have sufficient cybersecurity. And if you use a server and you don't store your information online, please make backups. Then consider a basic marketing toolkit for startup practices. The most important is that you get a website, that there's some social media presence, and for print marketing, make sure that you have business cards and, if appropriate, flyers. It's also helpful to do in-person marketing. Contact colleagues and other healthcare professionals working in a similar field of practice. And that is mostly the hardest to do, especially if you are new in the practice. but it is helpful to go and see who are around you and who can refer to you, but also who is potentially your competition, or what specialty or other healthcare practitioners of the same profession in, and where are the gaps in the market. You can have a look at the HPCSA booklet 16 that is helpful to provide some ethical guidelines on social media. We will have a marketing session that looks into it with more detail later on. Then affiliations and memberships. It's important that you belong where it is right for you. So your professional association fights a lot of fights for you on your behalf. So the things that make you lie awake at night then becomes a no-brainer, because you know that your professional association has your back. Also join interest groups and other collectives. It's now very accessible. Online, there are many Facebook groups that address certain issues that you have an interest in. So it is really helpful, because that's also how we grow. That's where we get information that we might not be aware of, that triggers our interest. So please reach out to other people around you that has the same interests. Then finding the right location for your practice. Location is definitely influential when we look at the long-term success of the practice. So considering the exact location is very important. So think of your patient demographics. If you work with children, you might want to be close to schools. If you work with workplaces, that might be different than where you put your practice, including hospitals. It needs to also be easily accessible with public transport. So really think about the type of patient that you expect within your practice and make sure that the location is a good fit. Also consider other healthcare practitioners. Consider your competitors nearby, nearby health services that would complement your practice, and also potential referrers. And then accessibility. There needs to be adequate parking and disabled parking accessible for people with disabilities. I recently had a discussion with a medical practitioner who is in a building where there are flats on top, and then she rents one of the shops at the bottom. She does not have parking that is directly accessible from her practice. So people need to park across the street in a parking lot where there's a shopping center to access. So you can imagine now, for a person with a disability, that might not be as accessible as another practice that is within a clinic or an office building that's got a lift. So think also about the potential of your practice. Growth and expansion, is that possible in the space that you are in? Can you rent another office space nearby if you employ more healthcare practitioners? So really think about that as well when you choose the location. And then also ask why the previous tenant left. Sometimes it's helpful to know why they've left. It might be because of noisy neighbors, or because of a smell, because the person that rents out to you is a difficult person. So really getting that information can also help you to make the right decision. And then when we think about moving into private practice, what is the best? Ideally, 2 years clinical experience is recommended before you go into private practice. And the main reason is because private practice can be very lonely. And where do you then soundboard? How do you move, how do you get information that you need? How do you move the goalposts for you if there's no guidance? So at least 2 years clinical experience, fairly, you can cope on your own. and you know what you then do without supervision within your own practice. When you design your practice, it is helpful that you get the basics right from the go. Now, council zoning or building regulations might apply to the construction of your practice. If you do it at your home and you want to work from home, that might have that might have an impact. Or you buy a property that's in a suburb, that might also then impact the or require council zoning. So if already you have a business, you move into a business structure, a building, that might then be fine because already there's council zoning and building regulations that have been adhered to. When you then walk into the office, consider temperature control. Are the air cons, are the heaters around? And then also electricity and load shedding solutions. Obviously, accessible water. Does it have a kitchen? Do you need a basin for whatever reason? Wi-Fi access. Maybe the building has specific Wi-Fi, or you would have to get your own telephone lines, or are you going to use cell phones? And then specifically sufficient lighting near workstations. So it might be that you have to change the lighting to ensure that there's adequate lighting. Then what is the accessibility like for those with mobility concerns? Are there ramps? Are there railings, lifts? What is available? You know, also from a bathroom perspective, are these accessible? Are there adequate bathrooms? Is it down the passage and far? And you've got little ones in your practice. What will work best? Also, you need to maybe consider specific spaces that may be required to support your practice. Is there a communal kitchen, as an example? Is the practice large enough to have a bathroom inside the practice? So really think about what is needed for your patient population. Clearly visible directions might be great, specifically inside your practice, to say reception to the left and bathroom to the right, or even outside of your practice, you know, when people move or walk towards your practice from the parking lot. And then patient privacy. Think of the walls within your practice. Is it soundproof? Is it not? Making sure that the consult rooms is located far from the reception areas. So there's a website called disabilityinfo.sa.co.za that really helps to make sure that you have the information for people with disability. Then your reception area, waiting room, and the receiving area, usually 1.8 square meters per person is needed. For small chairs, the larger your chairs, the more space you will need. And when you have people that tend to wait for long periods, consider additional space for hospitality, like coffee and tea or water. If you see children in your area or in your practice, it would make sense that you have a children's area. So think also the size that you need for what you plan. If you want them to play, you probably will have a larger area. If it's more books or magazines, it will be a smaller area. Then reception within your practice or your administrative area. About 4.5 square meters is the minimum for one person to work comfortably. For each additional person, there will be another 3 square meters required. And then think about, do you need extra space for storage or file cabinets, copying machine, etc. And for most small private practices, all the business activity takes place in that area. So consider the size carefully. So if you have a receptionist sitting there, but you as a practitioner quickly also do your process notes in that space, consider that, or the cupboards are behind the receptionist, you would need to be able to move around the receptionist in the back. So really consider all of those things when you design your practice and figure out the spacing. Then you might want an employee break area. You don't necessarily need one, but for a full break room with a table and chairs, the average space required is 6 square meters. If you don't want a full break room, you should plan kitchen space for a small refrigerator and a microwave in a non-public area. And it is helpful if I consider in my practice, quickly in the kitchen, you can close the door, you can quickly warm your lunch while people are still waiting in the waiting room, but you have a quick 15 minutes to have your lunch or to have a cup of coffee, and also just to ground and to regroup between sessions. So consider that for your staff and even for yourself. Then consider accessibility, not only just for hearing or visually impaired, but also for wheelchairs and other mobility tools. As an example, if it's really difficult to get a door open, someone who uses a wheelchair or a walker is going to have difficulty getting in and out of that door. So consider the National Building Regulations and Building Standards Act. It's a lot to read, but again, you can go to that website. It provides most of the information. Then storage, we don't often think about it, and hopefully you do store most of your patient files online on a server where it's safe or in the cloud, and so sometimes when we use games or activities with our clients, we need some storage. You can store it in a cupboard, in a that closes, that has got doors, or an open cupboard, but ultimately you want your space to look professional, and the storage is included in that or makes part of it. So plan on a separate secure room if you can to store your patient files or other confidential documents where patients don't have access to it, and ensure enough storage space for other files, assessment and treatment materials, office supplies, marketing materials, etc. This can be added onto the reception area or made into a separate space, but it's important that patients and other unauthorized people don't have access to your patient files and other confidential documents. And that is the information for this evening. So things to work on in the next week is it's helpful to decide on a business model, or at least start consulting on what would be the best for you, and to proceed with formalization if you have not yet done so. If you want to change it, you can also then consult, ensure your registrations are in place, BHF, HPCSA, CIPC, if you have, if you want to do an incorporated company, design your stationery, that's usually fun and creative. Consider billing software or practice management software, or look at an external billing agency. Connect with your funders, and usually a good way to do that slowly but surely is to start with the larger funders. Then as your clients walk in and they have new funders like, let's say, SABC Medical Scheme, then you can also connect with them. It can be helpful to connect with a mentor, or at least start exploring a mentor in your area of interest. Also consider your affiliations and memberships. And then if you are already in your practice, it might be fun to replan and redesign your practice, or plan and design your practice if you are new. And so that's that. I am welcoming questions. You are welcome to ask questions if you have any.
Hanneke, if we can maybe just, so from our side, obviously the office will share these slides with the participants who attended tonight. And then we know that next week's program obviously has a mentorship session associated with it. Can our attendees bring some of their questions, especially looking at the homework that you've sort of dished out tonight, maybe come, if they've explored some of those areas that you've mentioned, bring some of those questions along for the second part of the event on the 12th of June.
Perfect. Happy if they want to do that. If they do have questions this evening, they're also welcome to ask already. And Anneleen, they can email me during the course of the week if there's anything specific or they want more information or they're not sure.
Thank you. That's great, Hanneke. So if you do, if you've got anything, I see there is somebody. Hanneke, are you able to handle that one?
Yes, Abby, is there an accountant that you could recommend who works with many healthcare professionals? Lynn, that's usually quite difficult. What is helpful is to ask people in your community, who do they use? And you might then get the benefit of an accountant who already has been doing work for healthcare professionals. I do have someone in Joburg that I can recommend. Happy to share her details. I'll just make a note on email. I'll share that with you, Anneleen, and then you can just pass it on to everybody. Do locum therapists who work for us need to have professional indemnity? Absolutely, Gail. So you would have your own indemnity. It depends on what the the indemnity that you have is like, because practically you have to have your own indemnity, and then also your practice will have the indemnity and the locums should have their own. If a locum gets sued for whatever reason, the person that sues the locum can also sue the practice that employed the locum. So it can get quite sticky and scary. So if everybody has their own medical professional indemnity, everybody is covered. So that's the best approach. Then Sada, I missed part of the session, didn't receive the link timelessly, sorry, but I'm happy that the slides will be shared. Great, so the slides will be shared, and then also I will share some of the documents that I have mentioned tonight, or at least the links on an email that I will send to Anneleen.
Hanneke, and if I can just say something, it's actually law. It's required from you to have indemnity cover. So even our practitioners that work within a hospital are required to have professional indemnity.
Absolutely. So and interestingly, there's been in government, you didn't need their professional indemnity for many years because government took responsibility, and there's been exponential amount of claims, and they've changed that now, that each and every healthcare practitioner within government also needs their own indemnity. So that's very important. I think the fantasy or the confusion can come in that if I have indemnity for the practice, then everybody under working in the practice is covered, and it's not true.
And I think we have seen a change in South Africa. I think we are seeing more and more cases in terms of liability. Maybe not to the extent of our American counterparts, but most definitely, I think, and like we say, there are some of the providers out there who offer very reasonable malpractice indemnity cover.
Yeah, and some of them do, provide cover for, they call it vicarious liability. So typically where your locums are covered as well. But again, each and every one of us should have our own cover. Any other questions or comments? Did I speak too fast? Too slow?
Yeah, so and I think, you know, starting a private practice it can be overwhelming. And I think it
Absolutely.
is, if it is so, if only I had this list many years ago,
Yeah.
that you could tick off. And I think the important part is also to keep up with the regulations in terms of what you're allowed to do, what you are not allowed to do. Like you say, rules around advertising has sort of been relaxed slightly, but it is really important. And that is also where I think the professional associations and organizations come into play to ensure that we keep our members up to date.
So Magda is asking what MPI company or provider would you recommend? It's difficult. I think, I don't know, Annelien, do you guys have a specific provider that supports you? Like I know TASA and MPS has an agreement that offer reduced fees for members.
Yeah. So Sasla has with Genoa and Shackleton, and obviously through Profnet, we have got sort of an agreement with them. And I know we did sort of advertise it towards the end of last year and beginning of this year again. But it's never too late. It doesn't mean because you're halfway into the year that you can't.
Can always switch.
Yeah, and as I say, we've just obviously again, you know, the more members, the more we have, the lower they can make the rates for our members. At the moment, it's not part of our membership fees. It's not an option that you can tick like an add-on, but that is something that we are looking towards, maybe in almost like a tiered membership, where members can then select to belong to it or not.
Okay. So yeah, so I also use Shackleton Genoa through InStop. But I know Aon is also there. MPS has been around for many years. And I want to say that Profmet or PPS actually also have now put out medical professional indemnity. So there are quite a few providers, but I'm a fan of Shackleton Genoa, since you asked which one I recommend. I'm so glad that you guys are also involved with them. Then Gail, what are the benefits of a sole prop registering with the CIPC? I'm not the expert. I think when you are registering with the CIPC, when someone Googles you, your details will come up as a registered business, which can add to credibility. So it depends on what you want to do with your practice going forward. I think the second thing that we just need to consider, there's a cost involved, and you need to bear that in mind. So if you just start out, don't register yet with the CIPC. If you're clear on what you want to achieve with your practice and you want to go big, then go that route. That is my recommendation. But if you are still kind of sitting on the fence, get an attorney or a legal practitioner involved, get an accountant to give you some advice, or just ask. I think that would be good anyway to get that information.
And so, Annika, next week we are looking forward to diving into running a private practice, the admin and the operations. So, and as we say, associated with that will be an hour mentorship session. So please bring your questions along. I see there is another question, but please bring your questions along. That part of the webinar will not be recorded. It's a safe space for you to ask and share your questions. And, you know, I think that's exactly what you said. You know, you said, who should your partners be in starting a private practice? And most definitely a mentor, I think, is at the top of the list.
Absolutely. So Magda, I think choosing a partner, it's so easy, you know, when friends come together and they say, let's do this together, because we share a burden and it's tough and at least we have each other. But we know that typically that can go sour. So the first and foremost, most important thing is have a paperwork, have a contract where everybody is on the same page. And I think someone that has similar views, similar values already is a good fit, or someone that brings expertise to the practice that you don't have. You know, friendships come and go, and especially if you start working together, all the worms come out of the can. So be mindful about that. So having paperwork is the most important. Or have any tips on choosing a third party to fund your practice? Are you talking about a bank? Or are you talking about a silent partner? Bank or silent partner? I think the best would be to do a business plan, even if it's a basic one, because that already is going to tell you how much money do you need. And that then can get you into a space of what would be most applicable. You can then go and look at the facts. If I go to the bank that I usually bank with, or a different bank, what are the rates? What are they willing to give me? What are the terms, the payment terms, compared to having a private funder? And what are the facts, and how does that compare? So I would keep an open mind, and doing a typical pros and cons and looking at the facts, because that's going to help you make a good decision about your business. I hope that helps. It's vague, but I'd rather do that and assist you with some strategies that you can use to make a wise decision for you.
Hanneke, thank you so much for your time tonight, to all of our attendees. I hope that you know, you've got some food for thought, and that you don't feel so lonely anymore. Or for those of you who have got practices, to use this as an ideal opportunity to review, go and look what you are doing, how you can make it better. And I think it is, you know, private practice is a lot of hard work. But I think if you can plan, you're already setting yourself up and have a good basis, a good platform to work from. So thank you so much, Hanneke. We're looking forward to seeing you next week.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.